Today's guest is a financial expert who's helping us break down what she calls the ambition penalty. Stefanie O'Connell Rodriguez shares that it's common for women to underreport their income and shy away from asking for raises. We're diving into all of that today, plus Stefanie sharing her own advice for women who want to be financially literate but don't know where to start. This is Advocate Now. Stefanie, you're a writer, a podcast host, and financial expert, and you use all of these mediums to inform and empower other women. Why is that something that you're so passionate about?
Well, there is no doubt that having economic power allows you to have power in other aspects of your life. Money isn't everything, but it helps, right? It allows you to make more choices autonomously and independently and live in alignment with your values when you have that financial security in place. And I would also say economics is also one of the key areas where you see persistent inequality that holds back a lot of other inequality, like inequality within the family, inequality within political power. A lot of that ties back to what happens with our money. So I think it's important to talk about.
And I think many women are ambitious by nature, but also may be conditioned and programmed to believe that, we're not capable. Through your research, what are some reasons that women tend to tone back their ambition?
Well, I would say one of the biggest contributors to this is just the myths that surround women and ambition. The idea that women are naturally less ambitious than their male counterparts, like it's some kind of biological difference. There is absolutely no evidence of this. There's also no evidence of the fact that women negotiate less, or a lot of these other myths that we hear that women are like less aggressive, they're less likely to be interested in certain fields or leadership positions, or they're less likely to be interested or confident in managing their money. A lot of these things are really predicated on false assumptions. And those false assumptions are doing some real damage because we're internalizing those myths, not just women. This is the cultural myth. And so I think it's really important to understand that this is not an individual failing. This is our world and the cultural conversation that says, however much we like to deny it in 2023, that women should be X, Y, and Z and men should be X, Y, and Z. And it's these very limiting binary narratives that really disenfranchise us from our own ambitions.
And you talk about the ambition penalty that many women face. Can you explain what that is?
So the idea of the ambition penalty is that we're constantly dealing with this myth that we're pushing back against, that we're not ambitious enough, right? That the thing that's keeping us back from equal pay, power, leadership is this idea that we need to lean in more and ask for more, negotiate more, and just be as ambitious as our male counterparts. But not only are we already doing all of those things, when we do those things, when we do ask for a raise or negotiate a job offer or put ourselves up for a promotion, we're more likely to face backlash for doing so because it violates this stereotypical norm that leadership and power is defined by masculinity. And when women behave in these quote unquote masculine ways, they face this kind of backlash. And so the ambition penalty really speaks to the paradox that's at the heart of a lot of the empowerment advice that we give to women, right? We're telling them to do one thing without acknowledging the ways in which workplaces, in which relationships, in which society penalizes them for doing those very things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recently discovered that when women out earn their husbands, that they are likely to underreport their income. How do you think shame plays a role into that decision to underreport?
Yes, it's such a great question. I think what it really highlights is that these dynamics are not individual dynamics. Oftentimes we think about this idea of like, oh, I would never be explicitly misogynistic or racist or homophobic. But these are broader cultural and societal forces that say, you as this person matching this identity should be X, Y, and Z. And if you violate my expectations of I am not consciously oftentimes going to discriminate against you. And that is pretty bad. And the problem with that is I think what you're alluding to here is when we see women underreporting their income and men interestingly over-reporting their income, is we see this societal norm in action and what is happening. And what is happening is people are saying, oh, I know I'm not supposed to make more than my partner if I identify as a woman. And I know I'm supposed to make more than my partner if I identify as a man. And so what we see is people overinflating their incomes or underinflating their incomes to comply with the societal norm. And there's a real good reason for that, because there's a lot of judgment that comes from violating the societal norm. There shouldn't be judgment, but there is. And what we see in relationships is women who out earn their partners often experience a lot of backlash. Their spouses or partners are more likely to be emotionally or physically abusive. They're more likely to engage in infidelity, and they're more likely to have relationship dissatisfaction and have their partners withdraw from helping with the unpaid labor of the household. And all of that leads to really untenable situations, which raises the rates of divorce when women are breadwinners.
And we hear it all the time that, as women, we need to speak up. We need to ask for what we want. What would you say is the best way to actually do that? How can women take back their power?
So first of all, I think it's really important to frame this entire conversation within the context of women are speaking up and asking for what they want, and we need to really interrogate the systems that penalize women when they do just that. And so what I like to look at is not just, am I negotiating my salary, but am I in a space where my negotiation is not going to be held against me? Am I looking at a company that's reflective of the values it purports to have? You can have your diversity, equity, and inclusion statement on your website, but if your leadership team is all white male Harvard MBAs, that's not very diverse, equitable, or inclusive. And so one of the things I like to tell women is to identify the environments where you can see that people like you are having their ambitions supported and championed. And if you have an opportunity to see what the org chart is or to speak to people who've worked at the company, you can get a lot more insight into how those companies are operating and promoting people across all forms of identity.
And I think for many people, there's a lot of anxiety and fear surrounding money. So how can people break that cycle of constantly being in a lack mentality?
This is why I talk about money. I think one of the biggest ways to get over the stigma around it is to really just find places where you can begin the conversation. And this doesn't mean that for everybody it's going to start out, telling your coworkers what that you make or your best friends how much debt you're in. Start with wherever you feel comfortable. I say money already naturally touches every aspects of our lives. It touches where we live, where we can go out to eat, what we can do, the lives we can afford to build or not build. It's already part of those conversations. What we have done historically is lean out of that piece of the conversation. And my challenge to everyone is to have that thought that you're having about money when it does come up, when it's splitting the bill, when it's figuring out if the vacation your girlfriends are suggesting is actually within your budget. Having that conversation out loud and not just in your head is a really great starting point. And the example I always like to give is when my now husband first asked me out on a date, I just said, yeah, I would love to go out with you. And he said, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't care as long as it's cheap because I'm on a budget. And that was just a very easy way from day one to establish money as a part of our relationship dialogue, because it is a part of our relationship, whether we're talking about it or not.
Stefanie, such great information. Thank you so much for joining us today. And everyone, make sure you check out Stefanie's podcast, Money Confidential. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, visit advocate.com and advocatechannel.com. The Advocate Channel is here to be a voice for underserved and underrepresented LGBTQ+ and BIPOC communities. Join the conversation. Subscribe on YouTube and Facebook. Download our Roku and Fire TV app. Take us with you. Get the Advocate Channel app on your Apple or Android device. Thanks for watching. I'm Sonia Baghdadi. There's more Advocate Channel after the break.